This NFL Week 2 Player Props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app now and use promo code SGP. New customers can score $200 in bonus bets instantly when they bet just $5 on football. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code SGP. We're also brought to you by Game Time. Snag the tickets without the stress. Use promo code SGPN on your first purchase to save $20. Download the Game Time app and use promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Play the Underdog Pick'em in college or NFL and win up to 20 times your money in one game. Use promo code SGPN at Underdog Fantasy for a 100% deposit bonus of up to $100. And finally, we're also brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting research platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Download Hall of Fame Bets app or visit hofbets.com. Use promo code SGPN to get 50% off of your first month and start making smarter bets today. Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Friday, September the 15th, currently 1:36 on the East Coast. Here to dig into our NFL Week 2 player props, and we'll recap the game last night on Thursday Night Football. But joining me here to help me break it all down, you guys know him as the Motorsports King, the hardest working man in the sports gambling sports gambling podcast as well. It's Rod Villagomez. Rod, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing fantastic. It is Friday. We are that much closer to football. And I don't have to worry about watching a race and the football game at the same time. The race is on Saturday, which means all day Sunday, it's just for football, baby. I can concentrate 100% on football.
There we go. So now I can that's a great reminder. Now I can bother Rod tomorrow to give me some more winners for these races tomorrow. Or I just go listen to the NASCAR gambling podcast and also the F1 podcast there as well. But also joining us, I got my guy here with me, the second hardest working man. Oh, you're not second. He is also the hardest working man that I know in the sports betting world. It's Chris Cochran. Chris, what's going on, brother?
What's up, Munaf? What's up, Rod? Good to be back on the show. Good to see some Thursday Night Football as well. Didn't go as I kind of planned it. I mean, I didn't think that Swift would go out there and run for 500 yards. But, you know, if Minnesota's defense is not going to stop the run, then why would you go away from it, especially with, you know, Jalen Hurts looking a little So I know Rod probably hit on that under, but happy, of course. I mean, as you guys can kind of see, I'm happy and excited to be here and ready to talk it through, you know, ready to hopefully give out some winners. So let's get the show on the road, my guy.
Yeah, man, you talked about it like last night, the Thursday Night Football game. I don't want to say it went according to game script, but I think, you know, I think we were expecting to see points in this game. I mean, with a total, depending on where you got it, whether it was 48, 40 and a half, I think it closed at 49, but didn't look like it was going to get there in the first half if you had bet the over like a lot of us did last night. But the second half, within I think like the first 6 minutes, there were 3 touchdowns put up combined. The Eagles got out to 2 touchdowns within I think like the first 5 minutes, and then Kirk Cousins threw a bomb down the field to Jordan Addison to get within striking distance. But nonetheless, the Eagles do take care of business on their home field, 34-28. And if you did bet on the spread, depending on the number that you did get, you either pushed on the Eagles or you cashed in on the Vikings. That number was around 7.5, 7, and trickled all the way down to 6 in favor of the Eagles. But like you mentioned there, Chris, Jalen Hurts not really looking Jalen Hurts like, at least from last season. And I think that may have a lot to do with the offensive coordinator change that the Eagles did go through. Obviously, Shane Steichen goes over to the Indianapolis Colts to be the head coach there. But I mean, like Chris mentioned there, it was really the ground game last night for the Philadelphia Eagles that really kind of carried them to victory yesterday. And it was led by DeAndre Swift, who pretty much Chris mentioned ran for about 500 yards. I mean, to be exact, 28 carries, 175 yards on the ground. He did score 1 touchdown. As a team, the Philadelphia Eagles rushed for 48 carries, 259 yards on the ground, 5.4 yards per carry. And if you probably take out Rashad Penny's numbers from there, who had 3 carries for 9 yards, those numbers would be even better. Throwing wise, Devontae Smith had a big game, 4 receptions, 131 yards. He did find the end zone. A.J. Brown, not A.J. Brown-esque last night, but I guess they really didn't need him. We did see the not disagreement, or maybe a little argument between Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown, probably because AJ Brown wasn't getting the ball as much as he would like to. But again, I guess we'll kind of go around the horn here, guys. But it just seemed like that AJ Brown just didn't really need to be involved because they were just having so much success on the ground last night. But Chris, take me to the game last night, man. Your thoughts on what we saw last night. And like you mentioned, I mean, right now, at least on the ground, it seemed like the Minnesota Vikings can't stop a nosebleed.
Yeah, I think that defense, man, I was, big on Kirk Cousins throwing a pick, and he did everything. I mean, he turned the ball over every which way besides him throwing a pick, which doesn't help me any. That we saw some fumbles. I know he fumbled, I think when it's in the second half, and, a couple other turnovers as well in that offense by the running backs. And yeah, so I kind of expected that. I laid the 3.5 with the Eagles in the first half, and the football guys kind of blessed me with that with those running plays right before. I think they got the ball back with like 29 seconds left, having to go all the way down the field on a touchback because Jefferson fumbled the ball into the end zone. Yeah. So they take it all the way down the field, and I get a 61-yard field goal. Which I know Rod loved that because he was on the kicker points. So yeah, I think I expect. So what I did expect, I expected the turnovers from Minnesota. I didn't expect their defense to be that bad. And at the beginning of the game, they were actually playing really good. They were actually playing pretty sound defense. They turned Jalen Hurts over on a poor decision that he made to throw into double coverage. So you gotta like that. But then that offense was just never able to kind of get it going until it was too late. And I did expect Philly to be playing from ahead, which they were, especially, once that third quarter started. So it was what I expected, but not, like you said, not the way I expected. I expected that offense to, kind of be humming and, Jalen Hurts to be slinging that thing all across the field. Long as he came up 1 yard short of what my guy Rod needed for him to stay under, I thought he would, get close to that. But like you said, he didn't really need to. I think that the little mush with AJ Brown, I don't think it'll be that big of a factor. Pretty sure they were all over there telling them, hey, AJ, we have a lot of other games to play. You will get your targets. You will be able to eat. But if they can't stop the run, why not just turn around and hand the ball up every single time? And I don't think I've seen a rush defense that was that bad in quite a while. It seemed like every single play they were, just winning the line of scrimmage and getting 4 or 5 yards down the field. Not sure why we didn't take Jalen Hurts double touchdown, anytime touchdown, something, right? So yeah, those are my thoughts about the game yesterday. Minnesota might be in trouble though. Starting 0-2 is not ideal, and they still got a pretty tough schedule coming up. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, last night, look, we talked about the touchback from Justin Jefferson before the half there. That could have changed the complexion of the game. But also 4 fumbles doesn't help, right? And you lose all 4 of those fumbles that the Minnesota Vikings did have, especially one on a punt return where they would have had great field position. I think would have been right around the 30-yard line of the Philadelphia Eagles. But I think Brandon Powell was the one that coughed it up there, and that gave that ball back to the Philadelphia Eagles at that point. Jefferson last night did Justin Jefferson things, 11 receptions, 159 yards for the Minnesota Vikings. But yeah, the defense, it seems like it is definitely in trouble here for the Minnesota Vikings. Rod, you had a great night last night. Jalen Hurts stays under his rushing yards and passing yards combined. Jake Elliott had a big night last night as well. He accumulated 10 points for the Philadelphia Eagles. But kind of your takeaway from the game last night, and how did your picks pan out?
So, yeah, like you said, Jalen Hurts, 228 combined yards. That's well under 299. Jake Elliott, 3 points over, 2.5 points, I guess, over the spread. I did not hit the AJ Brown total receptions at 5.5. So I'm a little bit pissed off about that because just like AJ Brown, I wanted him to get a couple more catches. He did have 6 targets on the night, so it's on him for dropping a couple of those as well. So, can't really blame it for, he was the second most targeted receiver, but like Chris and you said, they didn't need receivers last night. They had DeAndre Swift just tearing it up on the ground. And listen, if Devontae Smith didn't need a coming out party, we already knew how good he was, but this was another showcase on, you can't sleep on Devontae Smith. Like, he is going to be a thorn in AJ Brown's side production wise, because he's that good. And he's not like a number 2 receiver. He's a 1B. To AJ Brown's 1A. And if Brown's not careful, that could move up to 1A, and he becomes the 1B. So I think we saw last night exactly what we're going to see out of these Eagles now, and that's just a more rounded approach. And I think DeAndre Swift kind of gives them a better opportunity to do that, if that's even a thing, than Miles Sanders did last season, right? I mean, we saw Swift do well with his carries and surprisingly well, actually. I don't think a lot of people, Chris, like you said, I don't think a lot of people saw him running for half of his 1,000-yard total in one game. But here we are, now do we see that continue? Who knows? And they're always going to have the threats in receiving. They're always going to have Smith. They're always going to have Brown. They have Dallas Goedert even that could swoop in. Dallas Goedert was the most targeted pass catcher there last night. So, this is what we're going to see. I think we're going to see a lot less of them putting the game in Jalen Hurts' legs and hands. Now, granted, we thought he was going to run a little bit more, obviously, once they started having success on the ground. But when you hand off to DeAndre Swift and Swift picks up all the yards, you don't need your quarterback to run. So, it'll be interesting. Minnesota, I think they do need to hit the panic button. I think they're too talented of a team to be 0-2 right now. They need to step it up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that them getting Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator would have, really helped the offense as well. But I mean, last night, it wasn't Kirk Cousins' fault. I don't know, he lost a fumble last night, but he had an absolutely fantastic game throwing the ball wise. And I know the first thing when we did our Thursday night football player props for this game that both Chris and I wanted to look at is over for Cousins on his pass attempts, but that number just wasn't available. It popped up around 37.5, and lo and behold, I think it went according to game script that I felt like that they were going to get behind by multiple possessions, and now we just have to enable them to throw the football. Last night, as far as my picks went, I mean, could have been a disaster because TJ Hawkinson had 4 receptions in the first half, and it took them him in the final drive of the game to get over this number to get that best bet across the board. It was at 4.5, 5.5. I said that I was comfortable with going there. I think he got 3 receptions on that final drive, including the touchdown there for the Minnesota Vikings. So that one got home for me. The one that I'm most sour about, I was talking to Chris about this last night, was I had Alexander Madison over 16.5 receiving yards. He finishes the game with 3 catches for 11 yards. And the funny part was, not the funny part was, I think the more infuriating part for me was that his longest reception was for 16 yards. So that's kind of how it went last night for me. But my touchdown props got there. I know both Chris and I locked TJ Hawkinson to find the end zone. He got there twice. And also Jordan Addison, I think it was around plus 235 where I got it last night. He found the end zone as well. So do we definitely bounce back, at least from last Thursday's debacle in week 1? I think we're starting to make the moves there. Chris, you want to quickly recap your picks from last time before we get over to our week 2 player props?
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned Hawkinson. We both want him to score. We both liked him to score. Also, I thought AJ Brown would do a little bit more, but I mean, like we all talked about, he didn't really need to. So I was on his over 73.5 yards. So that one didn't come through. And Kirk Cousins just miraculously never threw a pick, and he was 7 for 10. So I love that cover rate as well. But like we talked about, we did get there with Hawkinson. For the touchdown, and also him to go over those 4.5 receptions. So not the best night, but also, a lot of room for improvement, but also at least we got our first win on the board because I went 0-3 the week before. So it feels good to, check that box, even though, it's not a sweep yet,
Yeah, I mean, one more takeaway before we get over to our week 2 player props. AJ Brown had that touchdown called back on that holding call last night as well. So that could also change the complexion of our player props here for a lot of people there as well. All right, gentlemen, before we get into our NFL Week 2 player props, let me tell everyone about DraftKings Sportsbook. Football is officially back in full swing with another week of epic games. And who's got you covered on the action for every single one of them? DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers can bet $5 on football and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Nobody's missing out on the action this season. All DraftKings customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every game day this September. Get in on the NFL Week 2 action with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app now and use promo code SGP to sign up. New customers can bet just $5 and take home $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code SGP. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. And we're also brought to you by Game Time. Look, if you're trying to get out to the ballpark before the baseball season is over, WNBA playoffs are in full swing as well as round one has kicked off. And also, obviously, with football season here, you probably want to get out to these games. But not only that, maybe you have a theater show in town, a comedy show that's in town, and you need to find those tickets. Well, Game Time has you covered. They have killer deals on last-minute tickets with their best price guaranteed. You can stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you're going to have. You don't have to worry about having to plan out months in advance to get those tickets. No, you can get deals right up to the time of the event. And the best thing that I love about their app, that they actually give you image of the seat views of where you're actually going to be sitting before you buy those tickets. So you're not going to have any surprises when you actually get to the venue. You can buy those tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're all set to go. And the tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through the mailbox or even your email box. So all you got to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code SGPN to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code SGPN for $20 off. Download Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices are guaranteed. All right, gentlemen, NFL Week 2 player props for the Sunday schedule. Let us kick it off. Rod, let's kick it off with you, my man.
I don't know if this is going to be a staple of every week, but I'm starting off this week again with Brock Purdy. I'm just going every single week with Brock Purdy. I think I'm going to take a Brock Purdy thing from now until the end of the season. But this one's an intriguing one, and I like this one. This is Brock Purdy to have more passing yards on the day than Jimmy G. This is a head-to-head over on DK. So Brock Purdy to have more passing yards than Jimmy G. You can get this at -105 on DK. I mean, last week, Brock Purdy did it. He threw 220. Very low totals for both of these guys, but it doesn't matter. It could be 195, 194, and Brock Purdy still wins this. So, but anyways, Brock Purdy did this last week. He threw for 220 yards in his opening game. Jimmy G only threw for 200, right? So this is not necessarily Jimmy G. We expect Jimmy G to throw, but he's got Josh Jacobs behind him, and he doesn't need to necessarily throw that much either. And for Brock Purdy's sake, I mean, we've seen him do fantastic and he's not one to throw for 300 yards, but 250, 260 is well within his wheelhouse. Whereas for Jimmy G, again, it's not necessarily his thing to throw for 300 yards either. But the Bills last week allowed 142 yards to Zach Wilson, and that is who Jimmy G is going to be facing this week. I know Jimmy G is not necessarily Zach Wilson, and obviously Zach Wilson's a little step down from Jimmy G, but that just means that this Bills defense is tough against quarterbacks. They were in Zach Wilson's face. They hurt Aaron Rodgers. What else? I mean, look, if we're going to go down a road, like Jimmy G is not necessarily averse to injury. So you might want to watch out on that one too. And plus last season, Buffalo's defense was fantastic against the pass. They allowed an average of only 117 passing yards per game last season. It's incredible to think about that because, you know, quarterbacks in their division are red hot and they only allowed 117 yards per game to them. Plus, look, the Bills let 172 rushing yards go last week to Hall and to Cook, right? 127 to Hall, 33 to Cook. That means that all Jimmy G's got to do is give to Josh Jacobs all day long. I know Jacobs didn't have a lot of rushing yards last week, but again, the key to success against the Bills right now, at least, is to run the ball. So might as well let Jacobs get his fair share of carries. Plus, when you look at what the quarterbacks, or at least what Jimmy G did against the Rams, and kind of gauge it, because Brock Purdy has yet to meet the Rams, surprisingly enough, in his career. So, but Jimmy G averaged about 259 yards against the Rams in his time against us. So I figure that's a safe enough gauge for where Brock Purdy is going to be. I don't know that Jimmy G is going to cross that threshold this week. So I think Brock Purdy is going to throw more passing yards than Jimmy G, -105 on DK.
A couple things here. I think that number one that you mentioned for the Bills at the success or the lack of success they had defending on the ground. I think that's something going to come into play here on Sunday, right? But I think we're going to see a motivated effort out of the Buffalo Bills against this Raiders team, and I expect that secondary and the back half of the defense to be up to the occasion. I would not be surprised if Jimmy G struggled in this game to throw 2+ interceptions. But I think you're just going to see a motivated effort here from the Buffalo Bills, and I think that again, Jimmy G will mildly struggle in this game. And on the flip side, Brock Purdy, we talked about it when we were doing the division previews, is that the playbook opened up when he took over as the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, right? And we saw it last week as well for Brock Purdy and that 49ers offense, who just absolutely ran through the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are supposed to be one of the better defenses in this league. So now you're going up against a Rams team like who lost a lot in their secondary, especially since they won the Super Bowl. This roster is completely different. Obviously, you have Aaron Donald still in the front for the Rams, but I think that secondary is a little bit compromised. So I do expect Brock Purdy to have some success here against the Buffalo Bills, the Los Angeles Rams this week. Chris, thoughts on this head-to-head matchup between Brock Purdy and Jimmy G?
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Me and Rod, I got a player prop that kind of ties into taking Brock. So I love it for that perspective. I won't talk about it too much because I'll wait until it's my turn. But yeah, I do think that we talk about Rod just mentioned and I think I agree with it as well. Minnesota kind of being like, you got to hit that panic button when you start 0-2, and the Bills, they can't start 0-2. Not the way they gave away that game last week, right?
Especially in that division.
In that division, you're giving away games. So I do expect there to be, a sense of urgency. This is not the NBA where you have 82 games, right? Seeding matters, everything matters. So for all of those reasons, I do think you get a really motivated, Buffalo Bills defense here. And on the opposite side, man, I love the matchup for Brock this week. So like I said, I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But yeah, I'm with Rod on that one. Love it.
Yeah. Chris, take us to player prop number 1, man. What do you got?
Yeah, okay. So this wasn't going to be player prop number 1, but I'll go straight into it. Just because it kind of ties in. I like Brandon Ayuk. I like his receiving yards. I know that the number is pretty low for Brock Purdy, but I think it's about low spot on Purdy and his offense in general. I mean, we see what they were able to do last week. We know how difficult it is to go into Pittsburgh. You look back at that spread and you think, man, I just had to lay 2. It was only 2. That was the spread was 2 and they won by 20. Right. So, I mean, we know how good this defense is. And the quotes came out about Trent Williams saying, he was hoping that they would be able to pick up a first down because he was just tired. He was just tired of playing offense, which is crazy to think. But you look at Brandon Ayuk, his receiving yards, 57.5, minus 110 is the best number that I saw. I just feel like it's a buy low spot for him in this offense in general. Rams allowed the 4th most passing yards last season. 4th most pass yards per attempt last season. They also played pretty well against the Seahawks, which I think was a little too well, in my opinion. I think we see some regression to the mean this week. Ayuk's coming off a monster game, and we know you can fluctuate and go up and down, but 129 yards last week, 8 receptions, and 8 targets, caught every ball that was thrown to him, which shows me that there is some chemistry, right? Maybe they've been kind of working on that. And 4 games in a row, dating back to last season in the regular season, he's actually had these 59 yards receiving that he needs. Also, I'm not sure what it is about playing in LA, but last 2 games he's played in LA, 6 receptions for 81 yards and 7 receptions for 107 yards. So I like that it's a super buy low spot for Brandon Ayuk and really just this whole offense, because there are a lot of, as Rod knows, and as well, but there are a lot of offensive, firepower on this offense. When we talk about Debo, we talk about Kittle, but I like Ayuk. I like the spot that he's in this week, and give me his receiving yards over 57.5.
Well, this all of a sudden turns into a 49ers podcast, but I'm also on a player for the San Francisco 49ers here. I'm going to go chalky here. I know Rod was all over this last week. CMC, rushing and receiving yards over 97.5. The offense runs through this guy. I know a lot of people probably don't admit that right now, but since this guy has come over to the 49ers, this offense has really opened up. Last week, we talked about it against the Steelers. He finished the game with 152 rushing yards on 5 targets, right? McCaffrey and the Niners, like we talked about, they're going to take on division rivals, the Rams, this week. And last week, the Rams won in convincing fashion against the Seahawks. But the one area that they did struggle in against the Seahawks was their rush defense, right? The Rams allowed the Seahawks to rush for 4.7 yards per carry. And Kenneth Walker rushed for 5.3 yards per carry alone. McCaffrey has had plenty of success against the Rams as well in his career. Last season, McCaffrey faced the Rams twice. Once was before the trade with the Panthers, and one after the trade with the 49ers, right? Those two games, respectively, he accumulated 158 yards when he was with the Panthers, and then 149 total yards when he came over to the San Francisco 49ers. I expect that continued success against this Rams team. So again, I think we'll see a similar script of what we saw with this Niners team, what they did in week 1 in this week 2 matchup against this Rams team. And I think we might see a little bit more points in this game. I think the Rams may have a little bit of more offensive success than the the Steelers did last week. But I mean, last week we saw it as well, right? Brandon Ayuk had a pretty good week as well. Debo was an odd man out last week. And again, we talked about that AJ Brown deal, is that I don't think Debo will be upset that he's not getting the touches as long as they're winning football games. But when you bring over a guy like Christian McCaffrey on this offense, who can do so many things for this offense in so many different ways, anything under 100 yards of receiving and rushing, I'm going to take the over on that until the market adjusts, guys. So I love the Brandon Ayuk play. I don't think we need to convince Rod on CMC and Brandon Ayuk here. But Rod, if you have any thoughts to add on that with their Brock Purdy, Brock, go for it, my man.
I mean, listen, you focus on Debo, Ayuk will burn you. You focus on Ayuk, then Debo will burn you. And CMC, you can't. I mean, there's too many people here to focus on for any defense. And to game plan against this has got to be a nightmare. I don't want to be a defensive coordinator going up against this offense, right? I mean, you're just scratching your head trying to think, okay, but if I double cover Debo, well, then Ayuk is open in the middle of the field and that dude can break away. Like, there's yards after catch in that guy as well. Debo, same thing. If I even let him open on a screen pass, I'm gone. I mean, he's gone, right? It's just, there's just too much. So while we're a little bit lower on Brock Purdy's passing total, I still think there's plenty to go around for these guys to hit some overs on this.
All right, before we get into round 2 of our player props, let me tell everyone about Hall of Fame Bets. Win bigger by betting smarter this NFL season with Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting analytics platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Research every NFL, NBA, MLB, and soccer bet with historical stats and data. Enter any parlay idea into Hall of Fame Bets Revolutionary Parlay Optimizer tool to get hit rates broken down by leg, as well as an expected probability for the entire parlay. Sort all players by hit rate for any bet to learn which players are hot and which picks have value. Stop betting in the dark and join over 30,000 users researching with Hall of Fame Bets to craft more intelligent, data-driven parlays. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit hofbets.com and use promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month today. Start researching, start winning with Hall of Fame Bets. And we're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy has a way to play alongside your favorite football team all season long. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5-for-5. It's a fantasy game, but you can win real money. This week, they have a special promotion. They're giving away $100,000. That's right. I said $100,000. All you have to do is make a pick'em selection that includes Tua's passing yards of 277.5 higher or lower. Underdog is going to select 10 random winners to give out $10,000 each too. So watch along, make your picks, and maybe make a little cash over on Underdog's mobile app or their website, underdogfantasy.com. When you sign up with promo code SGPN, Underdog will double your first deposit of up to $100. Again, that's Underdog Fantasy, promo code SGPN. All right, gentlemen, let's get into round 2 of our player props for NFL Week 2. Chris, why don't you do this off this time?
All right, so let's go with somebody that or a team that may have been just a tad bit forgotten because we haven't seen them in so long. Let's go to Chicago. Let's go to Detroit, and let's look at. I'm looking at David Montgomery. I know that first of all, I like the play because they've had the extra time. You always want to back the team that's the more rested, right? We haven't seen them play in since opening night when they got the upset against the Kansas City Chiefs on the road. So first home game, love the extra days off, and I like Montgomery over his rushing yards. 53.5 is the number. In week 1, he ran the ball 21 times for 74 yards, and we could say some of that was for control, right? Try to keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands, but I also just look at the Seattle defense. They allowed 152 yards per game on the ground last season, which was the third most. They ranked 30th against the run, and they tried to shore that up. They brought in a couple guys that should be able to help just a tad bit, but I don't know if I'm ready to trust them and know if they have that chemistry quite yet, especially on the road, coming off a win as well, right? You look at this Lions offensive line, we know how much they already improved, projected second best offensive line behind only, who was it, the Dallas Cowboys?
Offensive line, yeah.
Yeah, offensive line. And then the other key factor in this one is Gibbs, right? We talked about Gibbs in the first podcast that we did, and I like his over 3.5 receptions. What I failed to know was that they wasn't going to use him as much because we saw Montgomery not play as during the preseason, but then he came out and ran the ball 21 times. So if he's getting anywhere close to 17, 18 attempts, I think that he can go over these 53.5 rushing yards. To me, this kind of feels like a buy low spot for him, and maybe a prop that'll be overlooked by because David Montgomery is not the sexiest name, right? He splits the backfield, right? So I do think that Gibbs will continue to be worked into this offense a little slowly. So give me Montgomery to go over his 53.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, I mean, last season Seattle allowed the 6th most rushing yards to that running back position, right? And like talked about last week. Alone, they gave up, let's see here, Seattle's defense last week. They were okay, 37 attempts for 81 yards. But now you're going up against an offense that is definitely much improved under Dan Campbell over the last 2 seasons. And, we saw what DeAndre Swift was able to do last season for this Lions team, but also David Montgomery, who had a pretty good season last year for the Chicago Bears. And he comes over to this Detroit Lions offense in that backfield to provide some stability and a solid veteran behind Jared Goff. So I think this is going to be a game we see a lot of points being scored. I do like the over in this game, which just kind of tells me that we're going to see, player props going over in this game. And again, I think that we'll see pace in this game. I think that David Montgomery will definitely be able to get over this number of what was say 53.5. You said there, Chris?
53.5. Yep.
Yep, love it. Rod, any thoughts on David Montgomery?
It's amazing how much Montgomery was actually used. We thought Jahmyr Gibbs was obviously going to get a lot more work because he was the shiny new toy, and like you kind of know what you're going to get in Montgomery already, right? But he came out and proved that he's going to be a major part of this offense, and they're going to need him. So, Swift gone. Now it's Montgomery's time to shine there. So we'll give him the 53.5. I think that's a pretty good deal for him.
Yeah, last week, 21 carries, 74 yards for David Montgomery. So they're not going to be shy about him getting his touches. I guess we could say all throughout the season, but especially in this game against the Seattle Seahawks. Rod, take over to player prop number 2, my friend.
All right, well, we're going to go with another workhorse running back, and we're going to go with the king, Derrick Henry. Don't talk about him very much anymore because it just feels like it doesn't matter what happens. He's going to get his carries total is set at 18.5. I'm going to take the over. Stop me if you've heard that one before, but I'm going to take the over on this one. 18.5 carries. This is at -110 on DK. Look, last week he didn't hit this mark, right? Last week he only got 15 carries against the Saints. I don't know what it is about this Tennessee offense anymore. It just feels like they try to get cute and they try to do something that they're not necessarily the identity of their team, right? I know that they want to get Tannehill better throwing. They want to give him more opportunities to throw, right? They bring new receivers in for him. But look, the way to win is give the ball to Derrick Henry. That is literally the way to win for Tennessee. Just give the ball. It doesn't matter. You got to give the ball to Derrick Henry. So the last 2 times that Derrick Henry has played against the Chargers, he had 21 carries in 2022, 22 carries in 2019. The Chargers have allowed an average of 20 rushing attempts per game last season. So look, Derrick Henry, you look at his game totals, 11 times last season. He had at least 19 carries. Again, feeding Derrick Henry is the way to go. You got to stop being cute. You got to be able to do what your team is good at, and that's running. So I think they fixed that this week against the Chargers. I think they'll give Derrick Henry at least 4 more carries in this game and get him over this mark. But yeah, I can't be the smartest guy in the room as far as using Derrick Henry, right? I'm sorry, but there's a formula here. And if you give Derrick Henry the ball, you're better off. So Give me more than 18.5 carries for Derrick Henry.
I mean, I love it. Look, even last season, this Chargers team, they were one of the worst rushing defenses in the entire league, right down there with the Houston Texans. And that's just because I think a lot of last season, when you know your own teams, you can profit about it, whether it's the good or the bad. I know, Rod talks about the Niners a lot, and I faded the Texans rush defense a lot last season. And I always saw the Chargers name down there at the bottom of those rushing stats categories. Last week, we take a look at what the Chargers did or allowed on the ground last week alone. Wasn't very impressive for them, but we know that when you find success in the passing game for the Dolphins, they're going to take advantage of that. But I think in this game, at least when you have Derrick Henry, like we talked about in the offseason or the division previews, so that similar to Christian McCaffrey, like Derrick Henry is that engine of the offense, right? And I think that for him at 18.5, I think he definitely should get 20 touches in this game against the Los Angeles Chargers. And again, when you're playing in Tennessee typically is a low scoring team. Like they're that blue collar. They're not going to get into a shootout with you. We saw that in week 1 against the Saints, where it was like, a 16-15 final in that game. So they find ways to win ugly. And I think that has to be on the back of Derrick Henry here. Chris, any thoughts on Derrick Henry over 18.5 carries?
Yeah, I think what you said was perfect. The last couple sentences you just said, blue collar team, they don't want to get in the shootout because we know what San Diego wants to do. San Diego wants to throw the ball up and down the field. And I think the reports were kind of leaning towards Austin Eckler not playing with the high ankle sprain. Mm-hmm. So that's even more of a reason why their offense could struggle. That San Diego offense could struggle just a tad bit, which just, leaves the ball in Tennessee's hand a little bit more. And like Rod said, we're not the smartest people in the room. Like, this has got to be a lot of people smarter than us that just say, you know what, let's give this guy the ball and see what happens, right? At least if we didn't do it last week, let's try it again this week. And I would only be able to agree, man, this could actually be one of those props that get altered up, right? Where, maybe you even see 20, 25, attempts for King Henry.
I agree, man. All right, for my next player prop, I'm going to go over to a tight end that I do like this week, and that's going to be Darren Waller. I'm going to take the over 41.5 for him for this game against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, going back to last season, I think early on we caught on that Arizona Cardinals defense was just not very good against the tight end position. And I think that has also gone off to a poor start in week 1 against the Commanders. But kind of put in perspective, last season, the Arizona Cardinals allowed the 3rd most receiving yards to the tight end position. I think they were right up there as far as targets allowed and then within the top 6. And then receptions allowed to the tight end position, they were number 1 at 5.9 receptions they allowed to that tight end position. Now you bring in a Darren Waller, who's a nice new shiny toy for the Giants offense. And again, we talked about it last week. Last week, that Darren Waller was always in those conversations when we talked about some of the best tight ends in the league before his injuries when he was with the Raiders. We talked about the George Kittles of the world, the Travis Kelce of the world, the Mark Andrews of the world. I think Darren Waller is going to have another big game in this week 2 matchup against the Arizona Cardinals, and they're going to need him, right? Coming off the 40-0 drumming by the Dallas Cowboys, I think this is an opportunity for the New York Giants to respond against a team that is only projected to win about 4 to 5 games this upcoming season. Last week, Darren Waller, I think, finished up with, I think it was 36 or 39 yards for the offense of the New York Giants. But I think that game got away very, very quickly for the Giants last week. I'm trying to pull up the exact numbers here for Darren Waller last week. Let's see here. Last week, he finished up with 3 receptions for 36 yards, and that led the team for the New York Giants. And he had 5 targets, but I think those numbers are only going to increase. So we're just asking him just to be a one catch better in this game against the Arizona Cardinals, going up against one of the worst defenses against the tight end position. So I'll take Darren Waller over 41.5 receiving yards here, Rod.
Yeah, unfortunately, that burned me last week. I was on Waller for sure. I thought he was going to have a much bigger game. Obviously, in fantasy as well, I was a little bit frustrated by that, but you can't keep him down too much longer. And for the Giants, they have to get him involved. I mean, obviously, you saw what happens when you don't get your best pass catcher really involved more, right? Obviously, he led the team, but boy, that wasn't a very high bar to set there. So they gotta get him more involved. Much like Derrick Henry, Darren Waller's the best guy you've got on that field. You might as well use him.
Chris, thoughts on Darren Waller for week 2 against the Cardinals?
Yeah, just another one where that sense of urgency kind of comes into play for me, right? If you're the Giants and you look back at your season and week, 16, 17, and you say, man, we really started the season 0-2 with a 40-point thrumping by the Dallas Cowboys at home, and then we followed it up with a loss to the Cardinals. So I just think that this team is going to be, completely focused, locked in. I think Waller's in a really good place right here. This also kind of feels like a buy low spot for him, especially once he, kind of gets it going with Daniel Jones. I listened to, he was on Wake Up in this morning, whatever that NFL show is that comes on NFL Network. I heard him talking. He's just a very, mature young man. I like the way he speaks. It seems like he would, he's been through a lot in his career and, personal life. So I think, he's in a prime time position to kind of bounce back. He doesn't seem like someone that, would kind of let a bad game, just kind of dictate the next game for him. So I like that about him, and his character. So I like him in this spot as well,
All right, Chris, take us to player prop number 3, my friend. What do we got?
All right, so we're going quarterback because I wanted to start with quarterback, but Rod kind of threw me the oops. So we did the whole San Francisco triangle thing where we just kind of turned into the San Francisco 49er podcast. So now we're back to regularly scheduled programming, and I'm going Desmond Ridder. I'm going under, and this number is low. Like I understand that people don't want to take this, but I'm going under his 189. So when I got it this morning, it was actually 189. And a half passing yards. So they're not even projecting them to get 200 passing yards. Minus 110 is what I saw on Bet365. And since I've been looking, that number has actually dropped. I see it all the way down to 187. So hopefully it's some positive CLV there. But you look at this Packers defense. They were one of the better defenses in the league last year against the pass, top 5. You look at the Falcons, and I don't think that they want to pass the ball. Like they really don't want to pass the ball. They passed for a total of 18 times last season, probably felt like last year, at least when he was in. But yeah, just 18 times is what they passed the ball for. They'll be at home again. I think they'll continue to rely on, everything that's in that backfield from Bijan Robinson to Cordell Patterson is off the injury report and expected to play. And we know he plays some running back as well. So I think that they'll just kind of continue to rely on him. He passed for just 115 yards last season. And I think the offensive coordinators and those coaches will, try to protect him as well. You go back and look at the few games that he started last season. It was just 4. And he went over this number, over 190 yards twice. And he stayed under twice as well. And to me, there's a correlation between the teams that he's playing against. The Green Bay Packers is not a scary offense, I don't think. I think Jordan Love might have, kind of overperformed last week. But, in the games against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year when they were playing against, Tom Brady, of course you have to throw a little bit more. And then the other game was against the Baltimore Ravens, which we know that they can have a powerful offense as well. And this was when Lamar Jackson was actually playing. So you're going to have to keep up a little bit more. But when you're not playing against a great offense, I do think that they slow it down. I think the pace of this game will be slow because those are the games that the Atlanta Falcons will want to be in. So give me Desmond Ridder under 189 passing yards. I think he may throw for 150.
I think there was I don't know, should I read this more carefully, but I think Desmond Ridder just pretty much came out and said, I don't care about the stats, I just care about winning games, right? But we talk about this Atlanta Falcons offense. It's predicated on the run, right? We knew it. We talked about that with Arthur Smith coming over from Tennessee, bringing over that mentality of, him having Derrick Henry as a workhorse. But they have guys in that backfield that they can run, the football, right? Obviously, they drafted Bijan Robinson. They have Tyler Algier, who had a great week 1. You throw in Cordell Patterson into that conversation as well. So I think this will be a more of a low scoring game. And again, like you mentioned, that we probably don't have to rely on Desmond Ridder to throw the football a lot, where it's going to be more the Falcons running the football. So I can't talk you off a Ridder under, especially when he hasn't done this for a lot in the games that he has played in his career at the professional level. So no disagreement for me on this one here, Rod.
Fine. I'll be the one voice of dissent. Desmond Ridder throws the ball all over the place and hits the over. No, I can't. Why? I know that the listeners want more friction, right? They want us to stop agreeing so much, but how can we disagree when we all find such good bets? I mean, it's not We're not out here trying to argue each other's bets. We're trying to find you the chance to win money. And it doesn't help you if we disagree on everything, right? We're trying to give you the ones that win money. So yeah, it's a low number. It's a low bar, but when you've got guys like Algier who kicked ass last week and Bijan and Cordero who, the only thing maybe with him coming back in, that may be the one pause that I would get, because now he can go back to playing receiver. And we know that he's a pretty powerful receiver in his own right. So that'd be the one pause I'd have, but that's kind of a weak argument against. So.
Yeah, I can't make any argument. Serial pulling out in the chat there at halftime. Desmond Ridder, 8 of 10 for 24 passing yards in that game. Rod, take up sort of player prop number 3, my friend. What do you got?
All right, I'm going to take Amari Cooper. Can you figure out which side of his receiving yards I'm going to be today? It's set at 51.5, going over. It's Amari Cooper. Again, last week was kind of a rough week for him. Obviously, he only caught 3 balls for 37 yards, but he had 7 targets. So again, a lot like AJ Brown, right? You catch a couple more of those, you're going to get more yards. Don't drop balls. Don't miss your opportunities when they're given to you. So 3 for 37 last week, like I said, but 7 targets, so not bad. But Amari Cooper against Pittsburgh, against the Steelers, who he's facing this week, he's averaging 76.8 receiving yards per game. And I know that's a little difficult when you got Deshaun Watson, who only threw for 154 yards last week, but we all know that Deshaun Watson's very capable of doing way more than that, right? Maybe not 300-400 yards, but at least 250, at least 260. You can get him somewhere in that range. And if he does, that means Amari Cooper's probably catching a few more passes. So again, I know that it's difficult when your quarterback doesn't throw for very many yards, but if Deshaun Watson's going to get a few more this game and Amari Cooper can catch a couple more passes, I think 51.5 is well within his rights. Think about what Steelers did last week. Chris talked about what Ayuk did to them, 129 yards to Brandon Ayuk. Even Debo had 55, which is over this prop mark. So both of the receivers. And again, like we talked about too, always fresh, never soggy over here, talking about Chubb. Chubb went wild last week because he could, right? And that's the thing. So yeah, again, to me, I think this is an opportunity for Amari Cooper to get back on the snide. So I think he can get 52 yards receiving in this game.
Look, when we talk about this wide receiving group for the Cleveland Browns, and again, I keep on mentioning our offseason pods, but Amari Cooper's name popped up a lot, right? And I think that for him to be the number one guy in this offense, I think that chemistry between Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper is only just going to get better, right? Because we know this is obviously the first full season Deshaun Watson is taken over as a quarterback for this Cleveland Browns team. I know he came back last season after the suspension, but when you have a full off season to work with your receivers and kind of build that rapport, that's only going to get better in game time. So I think right now, the theme for us, at least in this pod for NFL Week 2, it seems like it's been buy low opportunities, right? Getting those buy low, those stats and the numbers that the books have put up and kind of taking the overs there. So I think this is another one. But when we talk about this, the offense for the Browns, obviously, you talk about Nick Chubb, Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper. Those are 3 stud guys when they're healthy and on the field. So, asking him to get 52, 53 receiving yards is not a big, tall order here for Amari Cooper here. Chris, any thoughts on Cooper here?
Yeah, I like the logical part of, like, Pittsburgh is better at what? I would say stopping the run. And Cleveland was able to run the ball all they wanted to last week against this Bengal team. They ran for 200 yards. Nick Chubb having 100, but Deshaun Watson had 45. So we don't think that Cleveland will be able to run the ball as effectively. So they will have to rely on their wide receivers, right? And Brian kind of mentioned the drops, and and then you mentioned the chemistry and how that's probably only going to get better over time. And Rod mentioned the yards from Ayuk and Debo. I think it all just kind of makes sense logically that Debo will go over this number next week.
I love it. Yeah. All right. Player prop number 3 for me. Let's see here. There's a couple I did like here, but I'll throw this one out there. Again, I'm going to stay with the buy low theme here. Ramondre Stevenson, over 50.5 rushing yards in this game against the Miami Dolphins. I know last week he didn't have a great start to the season, but that was against the Eagles. The Eagles rush defense, where he only had 24 rushing yards on 12 attempts against that Eagles team. But like I mentioned, let's not forget the Eagles have one of the stronger rush defenses in the NFL, right? It's that secondary that has a lot of questions for this Eagles team. But I think this week for Ramondre Stevenson, he does have that favorable matchup against the Dolphins rush defense. Week 1 last week, the Chargers running backs ran the ball 32 times. They accumulated 208 rushing yards against that Dolphins rush defense. That's an average of 6.5 yards per carry for those Chargers running backs last week. Again, we talk about that buy low opportunity. I think Stevenson is going to be that guy here when we talked about the running group. And out of the past several seasons for the Patriots, it's always been guys running back by committee, right? I know Damian Harris was there for this Patriots team as well, but now it seems like they've bought in or going all in with Ramondre Stevenson here. So I think that, again, number one, we know Bill Belichick does his best to take away your best weapon, and that's probably going to be Tyreek Hill, but it's very, very difficult to stop Tyreek Hill. I still think that he'll have a good game in this matchup against the Patriots here. But the best, I think, defense for the Patriots to win this game is probably going to be trying to keep that offense of the Dolphins off the field, which means you probably want to run the football more here. So I think Ramondre Stevenson, I think that if he does get another 12, 15 carries, I think he definitely will get over this number, especially how bad this Dolphins rush defense was last week against the Chargers. So over 50.5 rushing yards for me here on Ramondre Stevenson here, Rod.
I mean, is Ezekiel Elliott gonna sneak into that at all? Does he get a few more? That's the only, I don't know. The only thing that gives me any sort of pause about the Patriots is I just don't know. Like I never ever know. So I guess if you're gonna take a chance on one, he'd be the guy because he's clearly the one that should get the chance to do this. Like I said, I know Elliott's there to sort of kind of make people stop, and which is why that total's probably as low as it is because the books are figuring that Elliott's going to get another jump at it. So yeah, I mean, if I'm going to lean, I guess I'll lean with you on the over, but yeah, that one makes me feel kind of icky.
Chris, thoughts on Stevenson?
Same. Rod took my notes, again, but yeah, I looked at this one too, because I'm looking like who rushed for the most, who gave up the most rushing yards. I mean, and it felt like, us three could have went out there and probably combined for at least 100, like the combination of us, because their rush defense was so bad. So if you like Ramondre, I think you ride with him and just hope that he starts fast, so that way Zeke doesn't start fast. And because we know with Belichick, he'll kind of ride that hot hand, and before you know it, your guy's sitting on the bench, eating Skittles, waiting for the next opportunity, right? So that's the only pause for concern, like Rod kind of mentioned. But I think if he gets the opportunities, I think he absolutely clears this. Like I don't think that'll be a problem at all.
All right, that is 3 player props each. We will get to best bets here in a second, but gentlemen, let's do our touchdown props here for the NFL Week 2 schedule. Rod, you want to lead us off?
Yeah, so if you want to get in on Kelsey for a touchdown score, it's kind of a rough market because obviously the books all love Kelsey to score a touchdown this week. It's funny. I just saw a tweet earlier about him on the field. He was running and jogging, and then he started to reach down at that knee, and then he ended up twerking. So he was trolling the media on this, kind of clutching that knee, thinking, and then he starts twerking. You're like, oh, okay, never mind. Kelsey's back. He's going to score a touchdown in this. So the way I got in on this market and what I like the best is Travis Kelce anytime in the first quarter to score a touchdown at plus 360 over on DK. If you want his first TD in the game, that's at 550, but it's so difficult for that on the Chiefs side of it. Any number of those guys can get in the end zone, and I know they're going to want to try to get Kelsey in, but I also don't know that they're going to get the ball first to get an opportunity to do that. So I think it's safer to take Kelsey anytime in the first quarter at plus 360 on the off chance that, they don't get to score a touchdown first because they don't get the ball first. But again, I think Kelsey's getting into the end zone this week. It's kind of almost a foregone conclusion that they want him to. Obviously, they need to reestablish Travis Kelce. So, I'll go ahead and take Travis Kelce anytime in the first quarter at plus 360.
Love it, man. I mean, again, that offense did struggle. We talked about it last week that the Chiefs offense, obviously without Kelsey, is definitely not the same. So I think that he should have a big week this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, trying to get their first win of the season for the Chiefs here. Chris, touchdown props for the week 2 schedule.
So just kind of piggybacking off what Rod said, I like Kelsey as well. And that's not my play, but just you will have to think that Patrick Mahomes can't wait to jump in his arms after he scores, so he can say, "Thank God somebody on this team can catch a pass." Right? So I love that angle as well, right? But I like the rookie, man. I know he scored last week, but I like Bijan Robinson. I think that Ritter is going to struggle, and I know Cordell Patterson's coming back, which throws a monkey wrench into everything because he's a touchdown machine. But I just like that. I think that based on watching the game last week, you can just get this guy the ball so many different ways. I mean, he caught 6 passes last week. That was the way he scored. He didn't even have a rushing touchdown, and they scored 2 rushing touchdowns. And then you add another 10 carries. So that lets me know that this offense is trying their best to use him. You see how he's a man amongst men already. So I think that it'll be a game where a low scoring game, and he'll have his opportunity, especially down there near the goal line. And even if it's not near the goal line, he can catch one and run it in as well. So the odds aren't the sexiest on this one. I think you can get plus 115, plus 110 at some shops. But I like Bijan again. I just think it matches up well against the Packers.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue against that. But again, like you mentioned, it's the way, or so many different ways that can get Bijan Robinson involved in the offense and down there in the red zone as well. So I do like Bijan. I mean, we watched a lot of him in his time during Texas. So the guy is absolutely dynamic. All right, for my touchdown props, I got a couple that I do like here. I'll start here with Anthony Richardson, anytime touchdown, plus 145 against the Houston Texans. Last week, Richardson had 10 carries, 40 yards. He did run in 1 touchdown for the Indianapolis Colts. I think when we get down to that goal and go situation, I think that the theme has kind of been looking at some of these running quarterbacks, and obviously Anthony Richardson fits that mold. We talked about Jalen Hurts, who had 2 touchdowns yesterday. Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, those type of those quarterbacks that can utilize their legs, especially in the red zone. So Anthony Richardson, I do like at plus 145. I'm gonna throw Saquon in there, man. I think this is gonna be a big week for Saquon Barkley. The anytime touchdowns at even money, but I think that he could possibly get 2 touchdowns in this game. I think that was around plus 360 for him to have at least 2 touchdowns. But at even money, I do like Saquon to find the end zone at even money. And then the other one, the third one I'll throw out there, I'm going to give a mood here this week. I'm going to take a stab at Tank Dell of the Houston Texans, 5-1. Noah Brown did get put on the IL for the Houston Texans. I think that it's going to open up more opportunities for Tank Dell. He's had a great training camp and mini camp for the Houston Texans. And I think that he's really going to seize this opportunity for the Texans in this game. So Tank Dell, for him to find the end zone here at 5-1, Anthony Richardson at plus 145, and then Saquon Barkley at even money. Last order of business here, gentlemen. That's going to be our best bets for NFL Week 2 of our player props. Rod, lead us off. Best bet.
All right, fine. I'm going to go defense for my best bet. This guy is a monster, and his total tackle number is a little lower than I'd like it to be, and that's 9.5 for Roquan Smith. Give me the over at plus 105. You can find that on BetMGM. Dude, Roquan had 16 tackles last week against Houston. I know it's Houston. I get it. I know there's a lot of people to tackle against Houston. But look, this guy is a monster, and he had 9 games last season with at least 10 tackles. And the Browns had 51 total tackles against the Bengals last week, right? That's not a lot of tackles, but the Ravens had 80 total tackles last week. They were all over this. This linebacker is a beast. And for me, again, Roquan Smith at 9.5, when you look back, like I said, 9 games last season with at least 10 tackles, that's a lot of tackles. He is always around the ball. And so I think he's going to have that opportunity again, especially against the Bengals, who are pissed off that they had the game that they had last week. So they are going to be trying to run the ball more. They're going to try to get the short pass game going. That way Joe Burrow can feel a little comfortable again. And that lends itself well to Roquan Smith being right there in the mix, right? You got to get in there with tackling the running game, and that's what he excels at. So I think he's going to have a lot of opportunity to be around the ball. I think that means he's going to have a lot of opportunities to get tackles, and it's not even just solo tackles; it's tackles and assists, right? So, I like this to be over 9.5 for Roquan Smith at plus 105.
Yeah, I think when we talk about defensive guys, Roquan Smith, I think number one is sometimes underrated, man. The guy is a tackling machine. I mean, we've seen it all throughout his career where he's able to do it. And again, like you mentioned there, Rod, the numbers speak for himself for Roquan Smith. And I've always been a fan of him wherever he has played, whether that was Chicago or, wherever his current team is. But yeah, Roquan Smith has been that guy on the defensive side of the football. Chris, best bet, what do you got?
So I like Rod's I like the script. I'm a big script guy, right? And what Rod said made so much sense, right? We know that Burrow didn't play in the preseason, and he looked like in week 1 that he hadn't played in the preseason. So it makes sense that he kind of gets acclimated in that way. Best bet for me, I'm going to the Chargers game, and I'm looking at Mr. Keenan Allen. I love Keenan Allen this week. Didn't play it. I didn't give out his anytime touchdown, but I may end up playing that as well. His receiving yards, 65.5 right now, and it's moving up. Mine is 117, so you're drinking a little bit of juice, but I'm fine with this at 66.5 as well. One thing they're playing against the Titans, and one thing we know about the Titans is they really, really stopped the run, and they really, really struggle against the pass. So, Tennessee gave up the 4th most passing yards last season with 7 yards per attempt. On average, and after week 1 versus Derek Carr and the Saints, they're allowing 8.5 yards per attempt. So I love that for Justin Herbert in that offense this week. You look at Keenan, he's had at least 66 yards in 7 of his last 10 games going back to last season. And then what happened last week? Chris Olave had 112 yards against this defense.
Yep.
Just looking at his targets as far as Keenan Allen as well, he's had at least 9 in 4 of his last 5 games. I mentioned this earlier, but Austin Eckler is most likely, it hasn't been made official yet, but he most likely is not going to play due to that high ankle sprain. I think he has like a podcast or something, and he pretty much was like, hey, go pick up the backup running back. So that's even more of an opportunity for them to be able to pass the ball. So I absolutely love this spot for Keenan Allen this week. Over 65, 66.5, I'll take them both, and maybe even some alt lines for Keenan Allen this week.
I mean, look, he's a target machine, man. And again, we've seen that all throughout his career. And again, we know that they like to fling the ball around. So I think the game plan coming into this game, like you mentioned there, Chris, is that they do a great job, the Titans do, of stopping the run, but pass defense has not been the greatest, especially over the last couple of seasons for this team. So I think Keenan Allen should have a big game in this game against the Tennessee Titans. All right, for my best bet, I'm also going to go with the wide receiver here. I'm going to go Stephon Diggs, over 74.5 receiving yards in this game against Las Vegas Raiders. And we talked a lot about the Raiders not having the greatest pass defense. I think that's going to be something that they're going to be struggling with in this game, especially against a guy like Stephon Diggs. Last week, the Bills went up against a great pass defense in the New York Jets. But in that game, he still found a way to get 10 receptions, 102 yards. I could just imagine what he's going to do in this game against the Las Vegas Raiders. When you have Sauce Gardner lined up on you and you're still able to do that, but then not even Sauce Gardner, right? You're talking about a secondary that's really good for this for the Jets team. But the ability of Stephon Diggs not only to be a guy that can find ways down the field and be a threat, but also in the short passing game as well. And he has that ability to break out yards after catch as well. So I'm expecting this team for the Bills to come out motivated here, to be focused. And I think this offense will be on full display, led by a guy by the name of Stephon Diggs. So at 74.5, I would love to ladder this up to 100 receiving yards for this game for Stephon Diggs. So best bet for me, Stephon Diggs, over 74.5 receiving yards. I'm going to just make sure this number didn't move here, but I like this all the way up to 80. I think this is going to be a huge game for Stephon Diggs here. So the updated number right now, let's see here. Let's see where we at. Rushing, receiving. Where is receiving? Let's see here. Here we go. Stephon Diggs, the updated number right now is at 75.5, so it's definitely on the move. It's only 1 yard, but again, like I mentioned, I like this all the way up to 85.5, but I will ladder this up to 100 for Stephon Diggs in this game here. Rod, any thoughts on Stephon Diggs before we get out of here?
I will go back. Wouldn't it be nice if every player, NFL player, cared about fantasy as much as Austin Eckler would? That would make playing fantasy so much better. But yeah, Stephon Diggs, look, as far as fantasy concerned, I need him to have a big day. So I would definitely love to see him go well over 100 yards in this game. So yeah, and look, again, when you have the best player on your team, you need to get him involved. It feels like that's the theme of this podcast, this episode in general. Is just, you got to get them involved. And for Stephon Diggs, you got to get him more involved. Like, you got to feed him the ball. He's got to be pissed off as AJ Brown about not getting the ball as much as I think he wants it. But yeah, so I love Stephon Diggs here as well.
Chris, anything else as far as Stephon Diggs for Sunday?
Hey, he gonna feel like he just got out of jail. He was, when you play against that Jets secondary, it could be, that sauce jail can be a little, Gardner's Island can be a place that you don't want to visit. So I like just to bounce back. I think it's typical for the public and even us sometimes to kind of overreact to what we see in week one, but you can bet your bottom dollar that these players who underperformed and didn't perform to their standard in week one, especially if they, are elite superstar type talent, you can almost take it to the bank that they're going to play well in the next game. So love the matchup here against that Vegas secondary, a lot better than the Jets, So yeah, I think you got a winner with this one.
Yes, sir. All right, that is going to do it for our NFL Week 2 player props. Rod, anything else you want to mention before we get out of here, my friend?
No, sir. Just follow me on X at RJ Villagomez. There's a link in the bio there. Everything I got going on here, everywhere. You can catch some more of my props over on Sportsbook Review. I'm writing prop articles for all the primetime games, and even had 3 for 3 on Justin Jefferson last night. That was a pretty fun little run that we had going on. So, yep. And then, of course, check out the NASCAR Gambling Podcast, the F1 Gambling Podcast. Yeah, all that other good stuff.
Chris, anything else, my friend?
Love it. No, nothing else for me at all. Definitely check out all of Rod's work over there. He's doing. Rod is the busiest man, like you said, in the sports gambling space. So just follow me on Twitter. I'm doing some WNBA stuff as now that we have the playoffs. We had a couple games tonight, so excited about them. And then tomorrow, I'll probably just watch some NCAA football. Probably won't bet any of it, but then Sunday, baby, yeah, it's time to get right. So check out my work over on Twitter at CrispyCap and 2 P's 2 N's. Appreciate you guys for having me yet again. Enjoyed the show, and let's cash some tickets, fellas. Yeah, man, let's cash some tickets. Hopefully we can cash some more here on the Sunday slate for our player props. But again, make sure to follow Rod on X. You can follow Chris on X as well, like I mentioned. You can follow me on X at SportsNerd824. More importantly, make sure to subscribe to the NFL Gambling Podcast YouTube channel. We'll be live streaming all throughout the season for the Propcast on that channel. But if you haven't already left us a rating and review and subscribed to the Propcast, whether you listen on Apple Pod or that's on Spotify, wherever you do get your podcast players, just do us a favor, subscribe and leave us a rating and review if you haven't already. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Shout out to Serial. He joins us whenever he can. Appreciate you, Serial. We'll be back next week for Thursday Night Football. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and let it ride.